Egrants, I've already taken about 3 phone calls this morning saying they couldn't find either the funding announcement or their grant. Always make sure that you're on the website. As I don't know if all of you know, the Department of Justice, DOJ, they also have e-grants. So when you go in, make sure you're on the right website. Go to the Wisconsin Emergency Management website and go into e-grants through our site. To apply for this grant, you're going to basically look for it under the open funding announcement section here. And you're going to go ahead and click on it. One thing that I always highly recommend is you have the availability to view the document and print it. I always tell everybody, print the funding announcement and put that in your grant file, because that's actually what I've always considered to be like the Bible of the grant. That tells you all your allowability items, what's disallowed, what you can do, can't do, what any special conditions might be held on you. So just make sure that you print that document, keep that in your grant file.
I'll make one comment on that too, as far as programmatic stuff. There really hasn't been any changes as far as the program side of this grant from past years. There's a couple of things that are different. One is we did add one item onto the equipment list, which was for the computer section, and that was for...
And we can get to that when we get to the equipment too.
Sure. But just for cell phone signal boosters, so I was just pointing out that was one change. And the other real change that happened by moving it into eGrants had to do with the way the in-kind match is figured. And that in the old way we used to do it, you had to have 20% of the computer grant, then you also had to have 20% of the hazmat equipment side if you were doing both. And now there's just a straight 20% match for both sides of the grant if you're doing either or both. And for the most part, that's the only real substantive change. And just a reminder, if you haven't submitted yet, that last year was the last year we grandfathered in ineligible in-kind expenses. So if you were one of the counties that was submitting something like the gas bill or the water bill for the garage for the hazmat truck, none of that's eligible. It's just those few things that are listed in the guidance, as it's always been. It's just last year was the last year we allowed people to put things that didn't count. So it's not in the grant guidance under in-kind match. You can't use it this year.
One thing I'm going to show you on the screen that's really important too. Sometimes people have username and passwords and you are connected to more than one entity. So like you could be connected to the EM and the fire or the law enforcement agency or, you know, things like that. When you go in to apply, it's really important that you pick, because it would be in a drop-down box and you get to pick the entity you are applying under. So just make sure you click on the right entity, because the entire grant is built based on whatever you put there. So just make sure you really pay attention to that. So once you click your entity, you just click on Start an Application. And of course, my internet's a little slow today. And then you're going to see a pop-up box just like that, and it's going to provide you your grant number. Make sure that until you submit your grant, write that number down so that in case you start your application and you get pulled away for a meeting or a phone call or something else, you can log back in right to where you left off on that grant. So make sure you write that number down. Then what you're going to see are these are all the sections that you have to complete in your grant application to be able to submit it. So until the status on every one of these goes from in process to complete, eGrants is not going to allow you to submit the application. I know my button is lit up that I could technically, but it's because I'm an internal eGrants help desk person, so I have capabilities that regular applicants just don't have. So the first section you're going to do is your main summary. And on here, it's going to be looking for your project director, your financial officer, if you would like an alternate contact, and your signing official. One thing here to remember, I know in your normal jobs, you guys wear more than one hat. However, in eGrants, everybody is only locked into one hat. So whoever the project director is really should be the person that is going to be hands-on this project, overseeing the project, where if Dave here has a question on what you're doing, that's who he's going to reach out and talk to, is that project person. So they should really have the information on this grant. Your financial person should really be somebody within your financial department unit. So they actually see the funding coming in, they see your expenditures going out, confirm whatever you're reporting for expenditures for reimbursement, they can confirm those figures. Your signing official, this is a little unique. To Homeland Security, of course, it's always the highest elected official. However, every program does have its own unique rules. And this is one here that this program does not require the highest elected official. Sometimes this person can also be the LEPC chair. So depending on how your county handles this, it could be one or the other.
Yeah, and the way this, again, this nothing has changed as far as who signs the paperwork. What we do have is one of the sections, I forget what it's called, we'll get to it in a second, but it's the one where you can fill, if you looked at the grant guidance, the last attachment in there is the LEPC chair signature designation authorization, and that allows you to, if the LEPC chair is fine with the EM or who's ever doing the grant assigning it, you can fill out that form, and that person will become the signing person. So that's an attachment where you can change that to what you need it to be.
Okay. So to add on a project director, you just click on the add button. And right away, you're going to see where a bunch of names pop up. So I'm just going to see if my name is in here. I'll be the project person. No, actually, this is a good one to show. So my name didn't show up in here, and I want to be the project person on this. So what I end up doing is under last name, I just type in, you know, like the 3-4 letters of my last name, 3-4 letters of your first name, and you click on search. This is a perfect one because it's saying it can't find me. So we're going to add me onto this. So I go down here to the bottom where it says add new project director. And you just fill out the information. And for whatever reason today, I can't type. Ah. Then you go down, it says add a phone number. So you go ahead and click on that button. And normally you're going to want to hit, I mean, intuition makes you want to hit save. However, because we're still under only the phone number information, you click update. And that will add that phone number. And if you have another phone number to add, like a fax or a cell or anything like that, you just keep clicking on add phone number, you add it, and then hit update. And it will keep adding those numbers as you go. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And it added me as the project director. So then we're going to add a financial officer, and I'm just going to say that I know Adam, he just got a promotion.
Could we make sure and mute our phones?
Yeah, if everybody could please mute your phone. And oh, didn't it add it? I thought that added it. No. Oh, let me add that one. All right.
So as you can see, it doesn't always work right even for the guru.
Yeah, I don't understand. There, we're gonna. Now we added the financial officer. We'll add a signing official. I wonder if some of these, because these are people from OJA, and so I think what my problem is because they're no longer around, and Egrants is annoying that. It's not allowing me to save it. I could just add somebody, I guess. All right. This is weird. I'll have to have someone preset the next time, I guess. There we go. All right, so now we have our 3 sections that are completed. So then you go down to the project start date. The project start date and end date are always listed in your grant announcement, so make sure you look at those dates, and those are the dates that you're going to enter here. So I believe this was January 1 of 18 through the end of the year. And then next you go ahead and give this a project title, something that you're going to know. And then give it a brief description. And this is the box that basically, I always say, kind of tell a short story. Why are you applying for these funds, and what are they going to do for you?
And you can be brief.
All right.
Just something to keep in mind that some of these boxes and questions are mandatory for the system, and they really apply, some things apply more for the federal grants than our state ones. So
right. The next section is you're going to list your Senate, your state assembly, and your congressional districts. If you don't know those, there's this little function here where you click on View Map, and then you click on that. And did I click? Okay, so here's your Wisconsin legislative map. Here's your congressional maps. So you just click on that, and did I click on the right one? Oh, I clicked, wait a minute, I clicked on, I guess if I knew it. And it will bring up the state, and you can kind of zoom into your area to find out what your numbers are. So it's a pretty neat little function, and you just find out where you are and what numbers you are. So there's a picture of that. So after you find your numbers, then you just go ahead and enter them. I didn't really look at ours, so I'm going to pretend I did.
And again, just like most things, if it's got the asterisks, it's a mandatory field. If it doesn't, it's not mandatory.
And the reason for these questions are, you will be amazed at election time how much our phones ring with representatives calling us saying, what have I done for my area? What kind of funding have I helped get out to my locals? And because of eGrants, we can actually go into a reporting function in this, and no matter what grant it is, or how much money it was for, or what the project was for, we can pull a report and we can tell them, here's the grant funding or the state funding that went out to your area, here's the areas that received the funding, and here's how much money they received. So it gives them something that they can then turn around to their press people and tell everybody what they've done. And once you've clicked that, you click Save. One thing is to note is, and I didn't do it, before you click Save, at the very top of every board, there's a section Completion Status. Every time you finish a section, you need to change the process from In Process to Complete, and then click Save. And then as you see here, now that shows that that section is complete and I can move on. The approval checklist, I would suggest if you don't know the answers to some of these, you ask your financial officer because they would be able to provide some of the information on this. But it's pretty simple. You know, have you had a discrimination finding? Yes or no? Of course, then this one here, if it's yes, well, we already answered no, so that's a simple one to answer. Do you need any kind of technical assistance regarding this? I will guarantee you, if you click yes, somebody is going to call you and ask you how they can help you. We do look at these questions when we're reviewing the grant application. So I'm just going to say, no, I don't need any assistance. It's going to ask if you've used the guide on our website. And I'm going to put yes because I actually created the guide. Again, would you like someone from when to contact you? This is a little bit more open-ended question. Sometimes we have people that just put yes because they want to know that we got their application, or they want to know what the next step is. But you know, whatever the reason is, if you put yes, somebody is going to contact you. Are you a state or local government that has 50 or more employees and applying for $25,000 or more? This grant is not for $25,000 or more, so I'm going to go ahead and put no. Again, this says if yes, so we already know, we don't have to answer that. If the application is $25,000 or more, so again, we already know we don't have to worry about that. And if you answered yes to the previous question, so NA. So, but if you feel unsure about these questions up here, don't hesitate just asking your financial officer to verify that it's okay to answer no or NA. But otherwise, there's that section. Before I hit save, I'm going to go to the top and mark this from in process to complete because I'm done. And then I'm going to click save. The next section is the performance measures. And I always tell Homeland Security subrecipients this, and I'm sure Dave is going to echo the same thing. All of you are busy. You have a lot of tasks to do in your normal jobs. We understand that. Unless eGrants in this section is asking you to set performance measures, if it's asking you to tell us benchmarks or goals or objectives, if it's blank, don't give yourself more work. Just go ahead and be happy, mark it from in process and complete, and say save. The next section, budget detail. Now this is kind of getting into, I'll drive the system, but some of the programmatic portions of this is where I'm going to let Dave speak. So Dave, you want to go ahead on this?
Sure.
And I'll just drive, or you want to drive, it doesn't matter.
You can type.
Okay.
So the three sections here, the equipment is the stuff that you're buying, this equipment grant. So that's what we use that for. The travel, including training, that travel is not something that we cover, but the training. So that's why that section's in there, and that's for your in-kind match. The common one we see there is for offering hazmat training for the hazmat team members. So that would be where you would go at that. And other would be for the other in-kind match, the stuff that's listed in the grant. What we're going to focus on is the equipment. This is the main thing here. So budget line detail, you put in the summary. And this is, straightforward. It's something that's kind of one of those mandatory fields that you got to put something in. So yeah. Nice place to start by specifying if you were just doing computer stuff. You may want to note that there.
I can't type today for anything. All right.
And then we get into the adding the budget line item, and that's where the stuff is. So instead of having to use the old system as before, where you would look it up on that table, you would just go right into the picking something right from the list. What I do, if you know right away you're looking for pH paper, you can type that in first.
Is that what you're going to try to pick?
Might as well. The other option we can do is go right to the list first, and then, you can make your description look like what you're actually picking. And what you'll notice is when you see this list, this is exactly the same as that big, long hazmat equipment list. And that's where it starts. And everything kind of adds up the same. If you're looking at 1.1 on that list, it's the same as 1.1 here. So color change, field testing, detection analysis, if I click on that, non-electronic, oh look, hey, there's pH paper. So we can pick whichever we wanted in there. You can see just like these are the same things that are listed on the list with the same exact numbers. So if you knew you were going to go 1.13 because you really wanted oxidizer packets, you can click on that and you're good to go. Now, in terms of these other sections, these are mandatory. You want to put them in there. The equipment description, Shannon can give you more detail, but they show up, I think, in different places and different reports that we run. So that's why they're mandatory. The county located in, again, if you're looking at something, this particular thing is hazmat stuff for your hazmat team. So the county located in, you know, you can, if it's going to be your county. It could be if you're using designated another hazmat team from another county, you could put that other county in there if you want.
It's wherever the equipment is.
This is like for in the future, if we were starting to audit to verify that, hey, that meter you bought for that hazmat team is actually there, yeah, we can refer to this to see where there actually is.
So wherever the equipment is, that's where you put the county located in.
I think we're Dane, aren't we?
Yes, we're Dane. And we're going to say it's with the fire department, or, yep, just pick one. I just put us as OJA.
Okay.
And we're going to say it's fire.
In this case, sure. And again, remember you're doing things per line item. And again, this justification, you can be very brief. It's one of those mandatory fields. So yeah, oxidizers for field testing or whatever you feel like putting in there. It can be nice and short.
Nope.
Close enough.
Okay.
Project type. Oh, we still have TREG in there, I see. So you notice there that TREG, that's just Computer Hazmat Response Equipment Grant. That's just a little an acronym there because we don't have enough acronyms in our field. So we made up a new one. In this case, you're looking at the hazmat side of the grant, so you'd pick the hazmat response equipment. And so I think we're getting 5 packets, or what? Let's see. I guess we're saying they're $5.
Oh, we're gonna. How much you want to make them?
About 30, I think.
30. All right.
And then we're gonna get 5 packets. There we go. So there's that. You can see it totals up. And this is where then you put it on the state, because you're looking at, this is something you're buying. When it says state, that's who you want to have pay for that. And as was asked at our last training, if you wanted, on that page we just disappeared from, if you wanted to make it like you were, part of your in-kind match was going to be buying more equipment than the grant would cover, you could have put that under in-kind match. In other words, if that was just how you were doing it, that was just, there was a county that's how they were going to spend like $15,000 worth of hazmat equipment, and they wanted to know how to put that extra equipment to go to their in-kind, and that's where you, instead of putting it in state, you put it in as in-kind match.
That came off. Okay, so what he was saying basically is, let's pretend we already entered 5 or 6 other things and we already came up with our grant amount, and now we're entering the in-kind. So instead of entering it there, if this was for our in-kind portion, you wanted it under match or in-kind? Then you would have added the money here. Oh, all right.
Sorry, this is equipment and goes cash match.
All right, so then you would have entered it here, and then that's going to reflect your cash match if that's what this piece of equipment was for. But in our case, we still haven't met our grant, so we're going to put it right here. One thing to note is if you have additional things you're going to be entering, you just would go ahead and put save and add another. If you were finished, then you would just click save. But we're going to have something else to enter.
So this time, when did we pop to the other list?
Oh, it added it twice.
You can go there and just delete.
And we're back to
Okay.
one.
So we're going to add another item, right?
Yep.
So this time, and this is something I wanted to show you where it was just a little, I would say, a mistake I made in the guidance. I used the same tables that we used last year, just updated them. And for the computer section, I started, in the grant guidance, I used the regular numbering system, 1.1, section 1, 2 is hardware, 3 is software, 4 is visual age. Well, that's a mistake on my part because Egrants, there's only one list. So the computer list just starts after the Hazmat list is done. So to compare it to the list in the guidance, the computer-related communications age is 14, although it says it's 1 in the guidance, and hardware is 2, it's actually 15, so hopefully that's not too confusing. I'm contemplating, because there's a couple other little things of maybe just uploading a new guidance into here to fix some of this issue, but I think you can all kind of figure that out. So if we wanted to buy, and the only place that this does become a little bit confusing is just remember if you're buying, you can buy a computer for your Hazmat team, and then you can buy a computer for the office, for the Hazmat, or for the EM office. So if you're buying a computer for the team, it's up in this section under, I forget exactly what it's under, but you can grab it off the table. If you're buying a computer for your office, it's down here in this section. Yeah, here's computer for Heat. This would be the one for the Hazmat team, and this would be the one for your office. So I don't think that's too confusing, but I can certainly make it more clear going forward. It's just one of those things where we weren't able to set, we were allowed one equipment list, we couldn't do 2. So if we're going to buy a computer, we click on that, and it's the same kind of thing, new laptop for the office, whatever you want to put it in there, it doesn't really matter. Under the section, it is I grabbed the wrong section. Well, computer, hardware. And just another question that came up already, this list hasn't changed at all. If you're buying a computer and the computer has the mouse and the DVD player, all those things as a part of it, it's just a computer. So this is only broken down so that you have the ability to buy a mouse by itself. So that's why it's there. So if you're buying a computer and it has all the fixings with it, you can just grab a computer. So we said a laptop, so we'll grab the portable. And yeah, the rest of it just kind of fill it in as you would normal. Oh, sorry. I didn't share the mouse very well.
Yeah, name of the mouse.
And so this would be for the emergency management office because it's on the computer side of the grant.
So we're going to buy one, or what do you want to put, 1,500?
Sure.
And we're going to buy one, and
yep, it's going under the grant side.
all right. There was a question about what does the save and copy to new mean, and so if we went ahead and clicked save and copy to new, oh, what did we miss? Oh, we missed this.
This would be under the computer side.
So that's kind of a nice thing to see. If you miss something, Egrants will tell you that you're missing something before it allows you to go on. If I click copy and save to new, it's going to create a second record of the same thing. So let's pretend you were going to buy pH paper and you have a contract with a couple different teams and you wanted to supply them each the packet of paper, and you didn't want to have to go through finding it and putting in the all that information twice. It will copy it. It's going to be exactly the same. Then all you have to do is just amend it to maybe your second location. or if it wasn't going to be you and it was going to be the EMS, then you could change your discipline. So it would just allow you to change a couple little things, but it's going to give you the same information. You just have to put in the funding amount.
And I would just, you know, again, try to keep it as simple as possible for this grant. I mean, in the past, we haven't broken that down. If you bought 10 packets of pH paper for 10 different locations, you could just put it in as 10.
Right.
Packets of pH paper.
I'm saying, like, there's been one county where they have 4 contracts with different counties. Yep. You'd have to put those packets in those locations, so you'd need the 4 lines for the location.
Sure.
So, all right. So is this, and then now we're going to do one more for your indirect? Or are you going to do that into something else?
I think we should show them the table so they can see.
Okay.
So this is all the equipment you were going to buy. You spent $100 on the hazmat side and $1,500 on the computer side.
So you click save, and this is going to show you then what you have so far on your equipment line right here. So you can look to make sure you haven't missed anything and that the amount looks good. If everything here looks good, you would click save again. And this brings you back to your overarching budget. So now you can see so far you have $1,650 total that you're showing on your state side.
And the problem we have is you're showing 0% of your 20% match. So now you know you've got to add in more, you've got to add in some in-kind match. So if you were looking at, I'm funding my team
to train
for training, so you'd put, this is where you'd put in, you know, hazmat, training for the hazmat team. An example like physicals count, you'd probably, instead of putting that under training, you'd put that under other, but as long as you spell out that it's an in-kind match for physicals, that's fine. But again, this is a default. We can't change the purpose of travel. It's training for the hazmat team. That's really what's going on there.
I just can't type it all today.
So this time, because we're talking, this time it's actually an in-kind match. The cash match is for items that are actually on the list that you're using. In-kind match, you would put in here and probably what, $4,500 or whatever for your team's training, and you can hit save. Then we can look at the overall thing, and okay, now we're way over the top. We got 73% match, so we're well over our 20. You know, we could have made it more realistic by buying more expensive equipment more, but either way, you get the idea of how that works.
Yep.
If you've already figured this out, you don't need to go to this page and go back and add it in. You could have just added in your in-kind match and your any other equipment.
Well, it's going to bring them back to this page anyways.
Yeah.
The minute they hit save, they're going to keep coming back.
I just meant is you could do the save and add another. If you already had that all figured out, you could have added it all in that step. But either way, it's actually a lot simpler, I think, overall than the old system. And more importantly, you notice that you just have to match the entire, both sides of the grant with the 20%. You don't have to have a separate computer match, separate from your equipment match.
So once you're done, again, you just mark this section complete and hit save. And you go to the next one, which is the assurances.
And that's just cut and pasted from our assurances sheet that was always part of the grant announcement, or the directive as we called it. So yeah, just check that you agree.
You check agree, go back to the top, change it from in process to complete.
Which was another little thing that's missing from my directions. I didn't every time say change to in process to complete and then save. So
hazmat eligibility.
So this is if you are wanting to apply for the hazmat side, for the hazmat equipment, you have to agree to this. You have to agree to this.
So again, you just click on I agree, change the status from in process to complete, and hit save. Computer eligibility statement. And
again, that's if everyone should be checking that one, because you can do that. So you're agreeing that you are a EM office that you can apply for the grant, in effect.
And you, again, mark it complete and hit save.
Let's see, propagation statements. This is cut and pasted right out of the old grant language, and I certify my county has identified the response team. You can hit yes if you have a response team. In this case, we are, so we're checking yes to that, and that there you're just acknowledging that everything is correct.
And once you've made your two choices, again, mark that complete and hit save. Required attachments.
And these are just this is how we capture the signatures that we did before. And if you're looking at the grant announcement, that would be Appendix C. And what that is exactly the Excel sheet, that first page of the workbook from last year where you had the signatures just cut and pasted, removing some of the extraneous stuff and putting it into a Word form. So this is where you just list all that normal information, where you've got the total expenditure requests. I'm just saying to use the totals off the eGrant table to put in there for those two. This is the holdover from the old form. It may be something that I delete off for next time, but it is acknowledging when you have the LEPC chair or the person you authorize to sign for this. It does have the totals on it, just like it would in the old grant.
So this is pretty easy. Just click on the add attachment, and when you click browse, it's just going to scan your computer. So I'm just going to pretend that this was the document, my signature document, and you give it a title. And hit save. This will then take your document and it will upload it. And then once you're done, again, just like before, you mark this complete and hit save. If you have more than one document, you can upload more than one, but I think this is just your signature page, so it should just be the one. And hit save. And then letters of support.
Again, it's one of those sections where that's the closest title we could come up with. This is the one, the use of this is supposed to be for where you are typing in that LEPC chair designation and authorization. If you're having somebody else do it, that's for you're not that person, you're signing it. This is where you can attach that letter. You can also use it to attach other letters in there if you want. This is not a mandatory section. If you don't have anything to attach, you don't have to. But that was just a way to incorporate that, to address that signature issue in the grant itself.
So if you have an attachment, again, you do the same thing. You click add attachment, browse your computer for the document you're looking for, give it a title and hit save. Otherwise, you just go ahead here, mark this from in process to complete and click save. Now, as you can see, now my status will show complete all the way down until you actually hit submit application. If you say, oh, I forgot to attach my letter, it's not a big deal. You go back in, you change the status from complete to in process, and you click save, and that will open that back up for you, where then you can go back in, add whatever you forgot, and then mark it complete again and hit save. Up until the point you hit submit, you can go in at any time, make any changes. However, once you actually hit the button submit application, that application is then locked down to you and it's here. It doesn't mean you can't make changes. If you forgot something or need to amend your budget or whatever the case may be, all you need to do is contact Dave by phone, by email, and say, hey, I forgot this, or I need to amend that. He might ask you a few questions to get clarification on exactly what you're looking to do, and he can return those sections to you for amendment should he feel that it's a justified reason. I always tell everybody, it doesn't really matter if it's state or federal funding, you still go through your local audits. I always say print your application that you submitted and put that in your grant file with the copy of the grant announcement. It's always good to have a grant file so that when you go through your local audits, you have all that information. So once you print your application, then you could go ahead and click Submit Application. It's going to ask you if you're sure you're going to want to do that. It's going to give you one more chance just to make sure. I'm pretty sure I'm going to want to do that. You don't see it. Well, yeah, you do. So once you click Submit, one thing to notice, it now says it went from open draft. It now reads open received. That means that that has now been sent, and Dave now has that in his work manager. If it still reads open draft, that means you did not click submit or something happened and it did not go through. So make sure you look for any errors. It could be something as simple as you missed a part here and it's still marked in process, but always make sure it says open received, then you know the grant has been submitted.
The next step in the process overall is, we receive all the grants, the deadline's passed, all the grants are in, and we go through and review them all. Finance reviews them all. Carl reviews them all, I think. No, just the two of us do. And we're ready to send your grant back. I have to go through and adjust everything because, as you know, you usually end up getting about 80% of what you asked for because we don't have enough money to go around. So as part of the award packet you're going to get will be, here's how much you're getting. Here's your signed letter. And then you'll have to go back in and modify your grant to reflect those numbers because this is a change, and it's because it's eGrants and it's an accounting system, so you're supposed to have your budget be correct in there.
And to do a modification is really easy. Let me I have to log back in.
And there will be directions sent out how to do this when I send out that packet.
Yeah, because I was going to real quick show them. There's a button on there, but I want to get to my, I'll go in as me real quick to show them where the button for modification is. It's grayed out right now, but should, when Dave reaches out and says, do a modification and you log in, you're going to see a button right here that says create new modification. That's what you're going to click on to actually make your budget changes. So then once that gets submitted, that is then considered your most recent, latest, and greatest version of your approved application once he approves that. So. All right. So does anybody have any questions on any of the sections or how to do anything? One thing that I will stress very heavily is everybody should have their own unique username and password. Please do not share those username and passwords with staff. Everybody can have their own. There's plenty of them out there. We don't restrict you to so many per agency. It does help us so that if you call us and say, something's not right or you need to do something, and we're looking in there and we are seeing someone else's name, and you're sharing that username or password and you're saying, well, I didn't do that, eGrants does track everything that is done. So everything is tied to a person. So please use your own unique username and passwords. If I do find out people are using ones from someone that used to work there, I do shut them down. So please don't put yourself in that position. Get your own unique username and password and do not share that. But does anybody have any questions on eGrants or any of the sections?
Oh, you've done a good job.
Is there anybody
Jana?
else? Yeah. Yes.
Jana? Shanna?
Yes. Hello?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Kathy from Columbia County. I'm just wondering how you said when we get the award letter that we need to go back in and amend the grant so that it reflects the actual numbers. How does that work then, where if we had more, like we usually have, that they purchased more than what the grant was, and then at times we get redistributions of funds? How will that work then?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly at this point because I have to see exactly what it's going to look like.
For what?
Just that next phase when they have to go and modify the grants. I mean, we can talk about this offline, but as it is now, they can ask for way more than they're going to spend, and it reflects in there.
But eGrants will only reflect the amount they're awarded.
Yeah, and so it may just be the matter of just simply changing that total down to 80% of what you asked for originally. I'm not exactly
right. It's just
sure
a modification. When you submit a modification and you reduce your budget, if you're saying reducing it, when you reduce it, you just reduce your budget down, and that will bring your request in line with whatever Dave tells you to make it. And then eGrants will reflect that as your adjusted award.
Right. I understand that, but what happens then with all that other stuff that they purchased? It'll never show that we can ever be eligible for redistribution of funds if there's funds left over.
We're still, well, at a bare minimum, and again, I'm a novice when it comes to the inner workings of eGrant, but at a bare minimum, I will be keeping and printing out your original request.
Okay, that's what I want.
Well,
and I know it can be handled in system. Again, it's just my
right.
ignorance.
I mean,
can clear some of the
if you
stuff.
want to know how much they spent so that you can show that they spent this much and now there's more money, you could move an item from requesting state funding to moving that same item under indirect or cost share, where you're still showing you're purchasing the item, but you're covering those costs. That way, if he has more money left over and says, okay, you're eligible for more money, he can tell you how much. You can go back into those items being reflected under match or indirect, and then you can change that again back to state to say, okay, now you're saying you're going to cover that. So an item can get moved back. Yep, an item can get moved back and forth within that budget from either state or match or indirect to reflect whatever Dave is telling you to do.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, thank you too, because now I know.
and I just happen to know this. And I feel kind of bad for Dave because this is his first go around on this, and it's a learning lesson for him as well. I'm very fortunate where I've been working in the system for probably 12 years. And so I've had many grants that had match or indirect and federal share, and how you guys are lucky. Sometimes we made them split the cost of an item into federal and indirect. So you guys are lucky he's only making you do, one or the other. But it's very easy. It's a very smooth transition. eGrants handles it very well. And I'm going to offer you guys, my phone number here is 608-242-3231. And if any of you have any problems in eGrants, not sure how to do that, if Dave is telling you to do a modification and you need some assistance, I have created, the eGrants user guide is a wonderful guide. I created it, but it's also a manual. And anything I hate is trying to read a manual while you're trying to do something in a system. So I kind of created these 2-pager eGrants for dummies kind of a type thing. I've got one for a modification, one for a program report, one for a fiscal report. I'm going to share all those with Dave. He can push those out to you guys in case you need them. But if you need someone just to walk you through it over the phone, I've actually memorized the screens. I know right where all the buttons are. Just tell me what you need to do, and I will walk you through the process right over the phone anytime. Just give me a call.
And it may be something too that we'll talk about this offline here, but maybe something that makes sense to do another training session specifically on the modification for folks who haven't done it. That might be something we consider too.
We have a question here that says, I want to confirm that the application deadline is May 31st. Our regional director has indicated there may be some extension due to the timing of the training.
No, the deadline's still the same.
So, yeah, same deadline. Don't let, I am going to warn everybody, eGrants, when we build a funding announcement in eGrants for release, one of the nice components of eGrants is it tracks this state funding from the minute we put the money in the pot to all the applications that go out, to how much money is out there and who has the money. eGrants will also, it opens the announcement, it will also close the announcement. So on that deadline that was provided to you to get your application in, at 12:01 in the morning, eGrants will shut this application down. It will not matter if you have one open or you have not started one. eGrants will shut it down. You will not have the ability to take that one you have in draft and submit it. So please get your applications in on time. If you are having a problem, you will need to call Dave and discuss what the issues are, and then he can make some decisions from his side of this to how they want to proceed forward. But do not miss that deadline unless Dave does something different in eGrants and extends it or does something like that. eGrants will shut this down regardless of how many applications are sitting out there in draft status. So watch that deadline and communicate with Dave often if you are struggling. We've answered, we did answer this about the redistribution of funds that will require another modification. Yes, anytime that you increase your budget or decrease your budget, that is only done through a grant modification. That is how eGrants tracks the money. One thing about eGrants and the funding, it helps us to ensure that we don't get ourselves in trouble. eGrants will literally not let Dave allocate 1 penny over the amount that he has in-house. So let's pretend for round numbers, if he has $1 million, eGrants will not allow him to word out $1,000,001. So if he is telling some counties to turn back money and is telling some counties to increase their funding, those that need to increase cannot do so until those have decreased their money to give Dave back that money in-house. So it is a protection for us so that we don't get ourselves in trouble, and it also ensures that all the money is in place and ready for reallocation. So anytime you are asked to increase or decrease, you do have to do a grant modification. It's just like in Homeland Security world, it's the same thing. It's the same system how it handles that.
And that is definitely another change with eGrants, is that those modifications. So yes, you may have to do, odds are you're going to have to do for sure one modification, and when there's leftover money at the end of the year and you want in on that, you'll have to do a second one.
But one thing that is a nice thing, and we've always been praised by this by all the different auditors that have audited us through the years, whether it be LAB, OIG, FEMA, or even, you know, our local auditors here, it does give a sense of transparency, and it does have a tracking capability. So it does make it nice here in-house that we can always determine what has happened, how it happened, when it happened, and it does come in kind of nice for those audits.
And just a bigger picture thing too is what's one of the things we've been working on here at WEM is trying to get our state grants to work and look just like our federal ones, or as close to it as we can. So, you know, we're trying to get them all into eGrants, and it'll be the same for all of them going forward. So,
right. So, does anyone else have any questions?
Hi, this is Bruce from Buffalo County. I have one quick question in the equipment category.
okay.
When you were buying a laptop for the office, that was under category number 15, hardware. What is category 14, computer related? How is that
Sure.
different?
That's if you were looking in the guidance document, that is the first page of attachment B, the authorized equipment list. Section 14, computer related communication aids, is radio transmitter, weather radio, and 14.3 is the new one, cell phone signal booster. So yeah, just refer to the guidance document, and that'll tell you what those things are. And if you were to click on, let's see, which one did I say? Oh, because you were looking at, where are we? Okay. 54. Oh, now I'm confused. I don't know where we are is the problem. I wasn't looking. Oh, I see. If you were looking at, you were talking about clicking on this one, right? 14?
Yes.
Yeah. Then you look on there, and then those are your three choices. Yeah. So
Okay.
again, I apologize for, in the guidance, it's listed as, I repeated section 1, 2, 3, and 4 again for the computer one, but they're really 14, 15, 16, 17. So if you can get through that part, that looks the same. Okay?
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions? And again, feel free to email, call me, or Shannon. Thank you thanks for joining us. Goodness. Interesting.